Good morning. All right, so I got a meaty one for you guys today. This is going to take my entire afternoon because I started in the wee hours of the morning just trying to get this thing outlined. Okay, so um, hopefully I did all of that work in the foundation, so it should be a smooth sail. So we'll see how long this video is. But yeah, so basically, well, let's start with why I have the Book of Jubilees. Okay, so I bought my husband, or I gifted him, the complete 54 book Apocrypha for Christmas. And he was like, "Why do you give me this? Why do you give me this?" Because he was just like, he's already got a bit of a, he's got kind of a religious streak. So he's not really into the stuff that I'm into, which I find pretty common among marriages. Usually it's the women who are like way off in the deep end, and the men are like, yeah, no, have fun out there. Or they're just like, I forbid you. But anyway, so he doesn't really go off in the deep end with me too often, but he's still, he's open-minded, and that's all you can ask for. So it's basically got 54 books that were sort of ruled out as being part of the Bible. So like the Bible wasn't the Bible for all of these years. There were just scriptures, holy scriptures that were passed down and whatever and written and whatever. And then eventually people got the idea to, hey, maybe we should put this collection. Let's decide what the holy scriptures are, the inspired by God scriptures are. Before the Council of Nicaea was even a thing, Jewish scholars did this first, and they just did it for the Old Testament because that's all that existed. So this was in the BC days. They were like, okay, we're going to get some scholars together. We're going to decide what is considered Holy Scripture. And they basically they decided, and I did all the research on this, but, or if you don't care, then you can just listen to what I'm saying. So they decided that basically anything that from before Moses was going to get eked out, and anything after, I think, Ezra was going to get eked out. So our Protestant Bible, Old Testament, is Moses, nothing older than Ezra. So Malachi is the last book, but I don't think it's older than Ezra. I think they were contemporaries. So, so that rules out Enoch, because Enoch is dated earlier than the writings of Moses, which is the first 5 books of the Bible, right? And then Jubilees is quite a bit later than the latest prophet. So it's about it's like 200 BC, I think. So it's still BC, but it's after everything else had been established. So from everything that I see from scholars who either, I don't know, they don't seem to really, it seemed like they just don't want to touch Jubilees with a 10-foot pole or something, because they just kind of say, oh, well, it's after all this stuff, so we don't consider it. You can't really see anything about what the Jewish scholars say about it, but they seem to reference it, because there's a lot of sort of lore, Christian lore, that I've heard over the years, that it's always touted like it's what people have come up with, or like what people have been taught in theology about, like, here's some theories on this and here's some theories on that, like, where did Moses get the first 5 books of the Bible? And it's like, well, some people think that when he was on Mount Sinai, he, that was when he got this, this retrospective history. So we've got all this lore that is not in the Bible, but it's sort of fits in. It's just like a theories that fit in with what we know. And a lot of the things is in this here Jubilees. So to the point where it seemed like some of the New Testament writers knew about Jubilees. And I will get to that in a second. So, like I said, it's dated to around 200 BC, 2nd century BC. Okay. It's nicknamed Little Genesis because it basically is a recounting of the book of Genesis and some of Exodus, all the way up to Moses, right? And like I was also saying, it is rejected by most scholars. Now we know why the Jewish scholars reject it as far as like a technicality. And that's why I say like it feels like they just don't want to touch it because they just kind of say like, oh, we don't, it's not part of the thing. So there's no point in talking to it. But I think that Jewish culture is a lot more accepting of just scriptures, just like manuscripts that have been passed down because it's just an ancient culture. And so, yeah, every once in a while you're going to get, there's stuff in the library that's not considered Holy Scripture, but we still read it because it's part of scriptures or part of, scriptures meaning books, because every single book of the Bible is an actual book. And the Bible itself is a collection of books, the books. So they're used to just having a lot of different writings from this person, that person, this rabbi, that rabbi, this thing, from dating thousands of years or whatever. But as far as Christian scholars, they just say, oh, well, it contradicts. Or, there's contradictions in Jubilees. Or they really just say, well, I don't recommend. They just, it's just that general, like, don't go near it, thing that people do. Well, I read Jubilees. I'm about halfway through. So it's got 50 chapters. Let me go into the structure then for you. So it's got 50 chapters. Jubilees is 50 chapters, which is pretty lengthy. It's basically like the size of Genesis. So, and Genesis is a pretty big book out of all of the books. And it's got 50 chapters. And the reason why it's called Jubilees is because it's dividing time into Jubilee years, and everything is referred to as, and a Jubilee is a collection of 50 years. So it's a book about 50 years that is 50 chapters long. And it is chronicling 49 Jubilees. And it's really weird how this accumulates because you think 49 doesn't seem like a lot. 49, 50, like this, sections of 50. Yeah, it's 2,450 years. That's 49 of these things. And it's literally going through like the first Jubilee, the second Jubilee, and this happened in the 6th week of the second Jubilee. So when it talks about the 6th week of a Jubilee, it's talking about a week of years. So, which we hear in Daniel, talking about weeks of years and this idea of a week being a 7-year period. So Daniel's older than Jubilees, but still, it's kind of like common language that's either, you can say, oh, they're just trying to mimic the Bible or whatever, whoever wrote Jubilees. Like, I got the mental critic in my head too. Like, he's there. I don't need you to help me be critical of stuff. Like, I've heard it so often. I got my own. I know what the critic would say. So yeah, this is after Daniel. And then it also makes a big to do about the 364-day calendar. and how, because 364 days is, 364 days is exactly 52 sevens or 52 weeks, right? So it really makes a big deal about how a year is 364 days. And it's really interesting though too, because in the introduction, it sort of makes a point of saying, it says, it's kind of shady. Its primary purpose seems to be in promoting the use of a 364-day calendar in Israel, a year equally divided into 52 weeks of 7 days each, with no and then it says, with no intercalary, which I think has to do with the calendar, intercalary method given, the year would not synchronize with the seasons in the long term. So the introduction is saying, like, if we didn't have that one day that to make it 365, it would jack up all of the seasons, blah, blah, blah. So another reason why it seems like no one is really messing with Jubilees is the only group of Jewish people that mess with Jubilees currently is the Ethiopian Jews. And this is this 54 book Apocrypha is coming from the Ethiopian Bible, which is the only Bible that includes all of the books that have ever been circulated as far as scripture. So I think the Catholic Bible is only up to like 46 or something. So it's kind of interesting too when you look at the history of that, because it's just like, people think it's conspiratorial, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I just think it's, honestly, it really just reeks of men and just the flesh. Like, I don't think that, oh, we need all 54 books or whatever. I just think it's funny that you've got this one group of Jews that, when you look at their history, they got festivals we've never heard of. They got all of these things because they were able to, it's like they existed in isolation. They weren't close enough to the other, where everything was popping off and things were, is it Greek, is it Latin, should we translate the, like, all that was like in the middle of, the center of the seat of civilization. And whether it's the diaspora, however they ended up where they ended up, they're sort of this isolated community. So they still got like, they got all of this old stuff that they're like, are we still using coupons? Like, they don't know what's going on, because they're just like, it's just this old community, and they've got this old Bible. Like, they got the oldest Bible ever. And so they got all these books like, y'all we ain't read these books no more. Like, it's like, you can't even blame them for being like, because it's just, it's literally just out of not being in the loop. That's why they have all this extra stuff. So so they're the only community that has Jubilees, which I think is hilarious. And so we will talk more about that 364 days as well. So the first thing, if you're, your inner critic who is telling you that, the inner critic is very, you have an inner critic too, probably, if you're a Christian. The inner critic is very, very concerned with, the doctrine being legit and things being biblical. Is it biblical? And, you just screening everything to make sure it's okay. Now, you just listen to a Jay-Z song on the way to whatever, but we got to like screen all of these scriptures, because it could be trying to get one over on you. Okay, so it starts out, pretty legit. If you want to say it's mimicking the style of the scriptures, you could say that. Or it's possible that it is inspired. Most people reject the idea that it's inspired, because if it was inspired, it'd be in the Bible, right? I don't know. Is God allowed to inspire things and not have it be in the big book? It seemed like he didn't say he couldn't do that. But if it's not inspired, that's even better. So now it can just hold it to a regular standard of a book, and we don't even have to argue about it. We can pick and choose what we like about it and what we don't, because it's not, throw it all out or leave it all in because it's not an inspired book. So either way, this should be not something that anybody has an issue with. But it starts out in the same language as the Bible, third person narration. Here's the first chapter. And it came to pass in the first year of the Exodus, the sons of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month and the 16th day of the month. That it's giving Genesis, Exodus already, right? And God spoke to Moses saying, come up to me on the mountain and I will give you 2 tablets of stone of the law. And you're like, okay, let me get my Bible out next to it. Let me see. Okay, Exodus. Okay, yeah, that did happen. Okay, then you keep reading. Blah, blah, blah. And Moses was on the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, yeah, I do remember that. Okay, and God taught him. And then, so you're doing that at first, right? Then, around chapter 2, I want to say. Oh, no. So, right off the top, it tells you, and I might as well get into it. Well, let me just give you that overview. So it starts off third person, then it goes to God speaking to Moses. And he says, and it's, write down the stuff, right? And then at some point, it's like the Holy Spirit almost becomes the narrator. And that's, I'm sure, where everybody gets really wonked out and is like, oh, Jubilees, ah. Because it's literally saying, like, and God told us and we blah, 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 which, gotta say, is very interesting because either it's the Holy Spirit, like you're at the time, you're like, is that the Holy Spirit? And then you're like, is it Jesus? And you're like, well, then you're like, no, it sounds like the Holy Spirit. Like, it sounds like the Holy Spirit. But what's interesting about that is if this dates to 2 BC, Jesus ain't nowhere around. So what is this we stuff about? Because it says God, it'll say God told us. So it's not God told me. So it's not 2. It's at least 3. It's at least 3. Now, we don't know. We don't see the third person. We don't see if it's 18. We just see God and this other voice talking, and it never goes to anyone else. But this other person that's talking is also in a plural situation. So, and this is before Jesus is born, which this is fascinating to me. So either this is heretical to high heaven, which it ain't. Not necessarily. You don't have to discount it, or it is orthodox before it got any revelations of Jesus, which could be the other thing, which is like, oh, is it inspired? I don't know. I got to be honest. I'm leaning towards inspiration because it's amazing. But if it's not, that's fine too. It could be half and half. Inspired by who? Like, who wrote it? I don't know. Why wouldn't he write? Why wouldn't God give this, 600 years before? Why wouldn't he give this to Moses? And it's not even so much like this is contradicting Moses. It's almost like, you know what it feels like? It's when you ask somebody what happened and they tell you, and then you ask that same person's wife what happened and they tell you. And wife got all the deets. Wife's got all the deets. You're like, were y'all at the same thing? So it's like, yeah, Moses did tell you. He's like, I told you all this. Like, nothing in Jubilees, as far as I've read, I'm halfway through, is contradicting not the Gospels, but the first 5 books of the Bible, or not even the first 5 books, Genesis to Moses. Nothing's contradicting, but it is giving like, oh yeah, and this was his wife, and she lived down the street. I remember it was Christmas because it was snowing, and like we had the sweaters. Like, it's that type of story. That's basically like, if you want to tell people what it's like, Jubilees is like if Genesis was the husband and Jubilees is the wife. That's what you're reading. You're reading the wife's account of the same exact thing. It doesn't contradict. Like, I saw a couple of things that were trying to say like, oh, well, here it says, it got real nitpicky. And anytime it gets nitpicky, I'm just like, you got nothing. Like, there's nothing about God that's nitpicky. If it said Jesus had a wife, it's like, okay, that is something we have to discount. But it's like here where it says that, it's like the idea that God is going to make sure that there's no errors and there's no confusion. It's like, yeah, he's not the author of confusion, but you're also confused all the time. That doesn't mean that everything is wrong. Like, I don't know. It's just like people don't, whatever. I can't get into that any more than I'm doing. So yeah, it's got these very interesting details. It's got, like Abraham's like origin story basically, and like, people's wives and, the daughters. A lot of times it just goes through the men, like in the Old Testament just goes through the men, which is understandable. Like, whatever. Like, it's not like we can conceptualize the beginning of time anyways. So it's like, yeah, he lived, after 203 years, then he gave birth to this son, and then they lived 462 years. It's like, okay, like, you don't need the wife, but it's like, but even the way that it is that, because everything is in Jubilees. So it's like in the second Jubilee, the third week of the second Jubilee, this happened. It's like, everything is, and the timeline is like, it's so detailed. It's like, wow. Even if you're like, oh, this was just made up, I don't see why anybody would spend time making up these things, especially in the second century. It's like, who has the parchment? Forget that. Who's got the stone tablet time to make up these dates? But like, let's say that they're all made up. Let's throw them all out. It's still very detailed, and it really gives the impression that like God knows every single thing like everything has a date. It doesn't even really tell you anything that happened before telling you the date that it happened. Like, everything is dated. It really gives you this impression, even more than the Bible, which, the Bible hits the high, like Genesis in particular, in Exodus, which is, any sort of compilation of stories. Like, it gives you the highlights, and it's like, and then this happened, and then this happened. And sometimes it'll fast forward a lot of times. Sometimes it'll just go in little increments. So it's hitting the details that it seems like God wants you to know that are important, context wise. But to see it like, this is the time, like the flood, it literally gives like the time of day that things happened. Like, this book is amazing. Like, anybody who's throwing this book out is a complete lunatic. I do not understand what's wrong with people. Aside from the fact, like, there's nothing in this that would take away from anything in the Bible. It is at least like a great companion. And personally, like, I wouldn't put it in the Bible either, because y'all don't deserve this book. Like, first of all, you have to love Genesis. Don't even open Jubilees if you haven't read Genesis, because you don't deserve what's in here than this here Jubilees. You need to love Genesis and love Genesis for at least a decade, and just pour over it and stuff before you even open this book, because you're going to open Jubilees and be like, I don't understand it. And you're going to get all this stuff, all these nuggets that you don't deserve. I don't think Jubilees should be in the Bible, even if it is inspired. So good job on God making sure it doesn't get in the Bible. But that doesn't mean that it's trash just because it didn't make the Bible. I think, some things, you don't put the good dishes out for everybody, is what I think. Because this book is amazeballs. Okay. And I read a couple of things in here that it seems like other people could be referencing. So I know, like, a lot of these things sound familiar from Josephus. So Josephus, which is a historical book, nobody craps on Josephus because, it's not vying for a place in the Bible, first of all. It's a historical thing. You can take what you want, leave what you want, but it does exist. They know. The value of Josephus is the fact that they can document that it did exist during a time period. They can get um, a solid read on the dates of things and Jesus' divinity, which it talks about in that book, which proves that people were actually worshiping Jesus in that time period, which I don't even know why people need to verify that, but that's for non-Christians who don't understand. So there's a lot of things in here that I recognize. So either Jubilees was before Josephus, so either he's referencing Jubilees, or, and a lot of the stuff too, it's not like Jubilees is giving you this secret occult knowledge. It really sounds like this is like common knowledge, like I was explaining before about like asking the wife. It's like common knowledge that people would have known that, if you didn't value the information, it didn't get passed down. Or, it's like there's so many library burnings and things that have burned down and got lost over time. Like, it could be that this stuff was everywhere all the time. And people, it's like, think about your family lore and how often it gets repeated. It's like, how often do you think they're going to repeat all Adam's stuff, in a time period where oration was the thing? It's like, it survived with Jubilees. Like, it's super interesting to us because we're thousands of years removed from it. But all the stuff that's in Jubilees, like, aside from it being just like technically revelation from God, I mean, the first 5 books of the Bible, or, Genesis and Exodus at the very least, everything before Moses, I mean, let's get this in context. Like, it's possible that Moses, it's possible that none of them knew anything about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like, it is entirely possible for all them slaves and Moses to not have heard a sliver about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob unless God told them. So all of this is sort of revelatory information, probably. I mean, I can't imagine them sitting around during their slavery times talking about the patriarchs for 400 years. Like, that would have gotten just left by the wayside. Do you know what I mean? So we're all reading and conceding to knowledge that we probably shouldn't have had, especially pre-flood. God would have had to give us this information. So, but anyways, Josephus references. Okay, there's a story about ravens. It's in Abraham's, like, when he's young. It's a story about ravens carrying away seed. And as soon as I read that, I was like, ravens carrying away seed? Like in that parable that Jesus said about the seed being planted on soil and birds carrying it away? I was like, and that could also go 2 ways. Either he's read Jubilees, or Jubilees is right and he just remembers it happening because he's Jesus and he remembers whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, like the idea that he's not pulling these parables like out of his butt and just like thinking random stuff, like it has like pulling it out of his butt. Like, he's referencing real things that happened. And that was kind of interesting. Also, there's another thing about, like, when Jesus says, like, Abraham was excited about, to see my day. And there is a part about where God is talking to Abraham about, like, which he does quite often, where which is totally in line with the God, of like just him laying out the entire history of something from beginning to end. And you're like, them not even understanding what he's talking about, and him rejoicing over the day. And then, which I will talk about later for one of these things, is one of these revelations that I got. There's a reference to 1,000 years being like a day and a day being like 1,000 years. Oh, wow. Who said that? Peter did, in a letter. Did he get it from Jubilees? Probably. Which is weirder, him getting it from an ancient text or him just coming up with it on the spot and putting it in a letter? Like, here, guys, that it's just, we do sort of see it like that. We see it as like Peter sort of riffing on, it's also in Psalms. Yeah, I get that. But we see him as riffing at about like a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years is like a day. But then we go, no, that's divinely inspired. He might have meant to just say that as just a measure of time, but it's in there for a reason, and we can use that. Okay, let's take it one step further and say, no, it does mean that, and they knew that already because they had Jubilees, and whoever wrote Jubilees probably had the same information that they had, which is from stuff that God told them, because he's always yakking. So, like, there's no reason to be scared of Jubilees, but at the same time, critic in my head, like the critic in your head is just, there's nothing, he can't satisfy the critic and make him go, oh, that makes sense, it's fine. He's always there. So I understand why people have always, you got to like read it with one eye open and take it with a grain of salt and whatever other metaphors that you need to use. But I need you to keep all that in mind, because I'm about to tell you the top 10 revelations that I got from reading Jubilees. And if you want to read it with or hear it with the one eye open, that's fine. Or if you want to just geek out with me, that's fine too. So, number 10, which I kind of alluded to already, and this is pretty much already part of Christian lore, but it's funny because it's like, where did we get this Christian lore? Which is Moses is given the first 5 books of the Bible. And he's given the history from the history of the world until the present moment on Mount Sinai. And Jubilees is basically detailing the information that God gave him all the way up till the present moment. Literally. Like, I could go to 50 and it says, and then you did this and you did this, and now we're up here on this mountain. Like, let's see. Yeah, chapter 49. Oh, in chapter 49, they're already talking about Passover. So, yeah, chapter 48. And in the 6th year of the 3rd week of the 49th Jubilee, you departed and dwelt in the land of Midian for 5 weeks and 1 year. Which, once the week of years is over, then it goes 5 weeks and 1 year. And you returned into Egypt in the 2nd week, and in the 2nd year, in the 50th Jubilee. And you yourself know what he spoke to you on Mount Sinai, talking about God. So, like I said, it is the first chapter is the first half of the chapter is, and Moses did this and Moses did that. And then God starts talking around the last half of the chapter and says, write down everything. Okay, and it says, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and God taught him the earlier and the later history of the division of all the days of the law and the testimony. And then blah, blah, blah. And he said to the messenger of the presence. That's where I'm like, who is that? The messenger of the presence, all uppercase, right? Write for Moses from the beginning of creation until my sanctuary has been built among them for all ages. So he says to the messenger of the presence, whoever that person is, doesn't appear to be an angel because the angels are distinguished as angels or as messengers, lowercase. And then chapter 2, and the messenger of the presence spoke to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, write the complete history of creation, how in 6 days the Lord God finished all his works, and then it goes on from there, right? So, I don't know, just English nerd stuff. The whole thing is in third person, looking down on everything that's happening. And then God talks, and then it says, and then the messenger of the presence said that. But then at some point, unless it's just one big long quote, which it seems like it is, then it starts saying we. But it's saying like, it's very interesting because it's saying we did this, we did that. But God the Father or the creator or whatever is clearly the head cheese. It's not like, oh, and we all agreed to do this together at the same time. It's like God says, do this. And then we, the rest of us, whoever, whatever that amount of people is, went off and did such and such. My guess is it's two, but it does not say. So what I like about it is like, what makes it seem inspired to me about that is that it's got that same sort of spiritual restraint where it's not telling you, like, it's not giving away everything. It's giving you enough to believe what it's saying is true. But it's like, why didn't you just tell us exactly how many more it was? It's like where the faith still has to be there. Like it's just doing everything that the Bible would do. Now I've read some hot mess stuff. Like I've read Gospel of Judas, Gospel of Mary, like these gospels that came out hundreds of years like after everybody was dead. We're not talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, who was written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I read Gospel of Judas. It's a hot mess. It's like Jesus is like a jerk, and he's like pretending to like, he's like doing magic tricks, and he's like, "Ha, you fool!" Blah blah blah, and he's like saying, it's like when you watch The Matrix and then you watch the other two movies. It's like, okay, whoever you stole that first movie from obviously was not involved in the last two pictures. Like, so yeah, it's definitely in the same vein as the Bible. So even stuff like Maccabees, which, you know, nobody is threatened by Maccabees, but it's like it doesn't have the same. It's got a very like human flow to it. I don't know. I can't really describe it to you. Okay, so that's my top 10 revelation. Starting at number 10. I tried to do a countdown. It's really hard to like rank all these. So it's a very loose ranking. But okay, so then number 9. Yes, Adam and Eve had other kids. And yes, they married each other. Okay? Everybody is like talking about, well, where's the other people at? And who got married if there was only 2? Okay. Genesis doesn't go into it, okay? Doesn't go into it. But here we go. So, and it will say something like, it doesn't mention anybody else. It says, and they had more sons and daughters. Anyway, moving on, like that. Like a guy telling you a story. Okay? So, chapter 4. And in the 3rd week, in the 2nd Jubilee, she gave birth to Cain. We're talking about Eve, obviously. She gave birth to Cain. And in the 4th, she gave birth to Abel. And in the 5th, she gave birth to a daughter, Awan. Okay? And then, let's go down a little further. And in the 6th week, he begot, is that Cain? Okay, yeah, so where it says Cain, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then she bore him another son, Seth. Okay. And then, okay. So then they had another daughter, Azura. And Cain took his sister Awan, which was the first one that was born, to be his wife. And she bore him Enoch, which is not the Enoch that we know. That's like, he was named after Enoch, the first Enoch. And then, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and she bore 9 more sons. Okay, and then the 5th week of the 5th Jubilee, Seth took his sister Azura to be his wife. And so I saw a thing, when I was researching this, and somebody was like in the comments, and they were like, why would he, that doesn't make any sense, like, that he would just be against, first he's all for incest, and then he's against it. It's like, dude, the DNA was plenty strong back then, guy. Like, what are you talking about? And then also it's like, people have a hard time separating like the pre-flood world and all of this stuff. It's like, dude, the pre-flood world, there's a lot of marrying going on, a lot of weirdness going on, and a lot of things that Like, yeah, like every time that, and I was going to get to, is that my next one? That would be great if that's my next one. We'll just flip it. No, do I want to do that? Okay, yeah, we'll flip it. Okay, so this is going to be number 7, but now it's number 8. So it makes very clear that once man does something bad, which makes perfect sense, that it sets a precedent and then things become unlawful. So it's like things are going, God is not like, that's why there's no law up until a certain time, because it's literally like in the moment. It's like, so he, let me see where it says about him, Cain and Abel. I don't want to take up too much time. I did all of this highlighting and or underlining so that I wouldn't have to do this, but let's see, chapter 4. Maybe it doesn't go into. Oh yeah, it is. Okay, so it doesn't go into. And here's the thing, like, so this is where Genesis does a better job, because when it talks about Cain and Abel, it tells you the whole story of like there was a sacrifice, or they were supposed to bring this and he was supposed to bring that, and then God talked to him, and then God didn't accept Cain's offering, and then Cain got mad, and so none of that's in here. It just says, yeah, about the time that Cain slew Abel, and then he got slain in the field. Slain in the field doesn't say like what led up to that and stuff. But I think that's also more because, that was a very established thing. This is an older book too, so it doesn't matter. Like everybody knows the story. But it says, and God reproved Cain because of Abel, because he had slain him, and he made him a fugitive on the earth because of the blood of his brother. And on this account, it is written on the heavenly tablets, cursed is he who strikes his neighbor treacherously. And let all who have seen and heard it say so. And the man who has seen and not declared it, let him be accursed as the other. So it's like this development of this murder law that starts because a murder has happened. And it also really like points to like how egregious this was, because it's like, they married their sisters and all that, but everyone was family. Like, so when this happened, it was like, yes, this is terrible. Do not murder each other. What are you doing? So this isn't, unarmed man, unidentified, blah, 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 from blah, like some billionth person. It's like, you just murdered your cousin. You just murdered your sister. You just murdered your uncle. Like, and then it's like, and if you don't tell who did that or that it happened, you're in trouble too. It was very, very bad. Very bad. So, and it literally says that like anytime any sin happened, it was like there was a heavenly tablet that was made. So yeah, that was my number 8 revelation that was formerly 7, is that the things that set precedent, it's like the crime set precedent, but also like when they did sacrifices to God or something like that, like if somebody gave thanks to God, and I always thought this too, just reading Genesis, I'd be like, I wonder if this seems like this was established because of an earlier person. So like, when Noah, gave a sacrifice, like after the ark landed and stuff, it's like that became a celebration. Like it was like, here, I'll read it. Okay, so blah blah blah. It's really long, so I won't go into it. But basically, Noah gets on the ark. Then the ark lands, and he does his sacrifice, and it goes up to a sweet smelling fragrance. And then the Lord smells it, and then he vows never to destroy the earth again. And then he does the rainbow thing, right? And then it says, for this reason, it is ordained and written on heavenly tablets that they should celebrate the celebration of weeks in this month for once a year to renew the covenant every year. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation until the days of Noah. 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees. Okay, so there, and 1 week of years. Let me finish it. And 1 week of years until the day of Noah's death. And from the day of Noah's death, his sons did away with it until the days of Abraham, and they ate blood, which is another way of saying like they became pagan, they was dirty. And then it says, but Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observed it up to your days. And in your days the sons of Israel forgot it until you celebrated it anew on this mountain. So keep in mind, they're on the mountain. The setting is the mountain. This is a flashback. Everything that we're learning about is a flashback. So what Jubilees is saying that God is telling Moses, or that's appropriate and proper, that festival was celebrated in heaven. And then Noah celebrated it for 7 Jubilees, which is 350 years, until the day of Noah's death. And once Noah died, Shem, Ham, and Japheth were like, nah. And so they stopped celebrating it. And then Abraham started observing it. So even in this old world of the patriarchs, things are getting lost and forgotten, which is going to happen a lot more once people go down in age and people are only living to 120 years roundabout. Like, Abraham lived longer, a couple other people lived longer. So yeah. And then the other thing I want to say about that is just the dates and times. The dates and times are blowing my mind. Again, like I was saying, even if you don't believe that any of this is real, just to see like the idea of like somebody that God was like, tell him all the stuff that happened from creation to now. And then the Holy Spirit or whoever, I think it's probably the Holy Spirit, was like, okay, so we started on a Monday. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. So he doesn't use the days of the week, obviously, but which is another very interesting thing. It's like we can't even imagine not having the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like that thing. It's like, no, we had a week of years or just a regular week, and then or measuring it in just Sabbaths. That's just yeah. Anyway, and let's see, is that in my honorable mentions? Yes, it is. Okay, so I won't go into that yet. Okay, so let me get to Adam, because that blew my mind. So it says, where does it say where Adam was created? Okay, it that's so funny because Genesis does the same thing where it like goes into like all the stuff and then it backs up to Adam. So which it could have copied from Genesis, whatever. Okay, so I like this. In the first week, Adam was created. So the first week, so like the 6th day, right? In the second week, Eve. Okay, so I gotta back up. Do I have to read all this? And Adam named them. Okay, so he's naming the animals, and I can't find where it says like the first day that he created them, because I know it says it. I can't find it. And then God says it's not good for the man to be alone. He causes the man to fall in deep sleep, different from the rib. So it's not contradicting anything. It's only adding details where there were none. And you can decide whether you want, again, I'm just going to keep saying it because I want y'all to see how cool this book is. And he awoke Adam out of his sleep, and on awaking, he rose on the 6th day. So I don't know if this is a 6-day creation, or we're on to another week. But I just was like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, that's interesting that he awoke him out on the 6th day. And like the next day would have been the Sabbath. And he brought her to him. And, this is not bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, shall be called woman, because she was taken from a man. And then it says, so it says, in the first week Adam was created, and the rib, his wife, in the second week he showed her to him. And for this reason, the command was given to keep in their defilement for a man 7 days and for a female twice 7 days. So it's saying that Adam existed for a week, not a week of years, but literally a week before Eve was created. Because you're like wondering, like, how long does everything? And then it says when they sinned, and it was 7 years. They were in the garden 7 years, is what it says. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, okay, so, and in the first week of the first Jubilee, so the first week of the first Jubilee, the first Jubilee is 50 years, the first week of it is the 7 years. Adam and his wife were in the Garden of Eve for 7 years, tilling and keeping it, and we gave him work, and we instructed him to do everything that is suitable for tillage. And he tilled the garden and was naked and did not know it and was not ashamed, and protected the garden from birds, beasts, and cattle, and gathered its fruit and ate. So it's like there's a lot of details in it that's not really trying to like be like super like, ooh, check this detail out. It's just saying like, but it's not in Genesis. So it's like, oh wow, he protected the garden from the birds and the beasts and cattle and gathered its fruit. Like, that's cool. So it's just giving you a more complete picture. And then it says, and after the completion of the 7 years, which he had completed there, 7 years exactly, and in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, the serpent came and approached the woman. So it's got dates of everything that happened. Like, why would you ignore this book? That's insane. Like, that's so authoritative. Like, just hear it out. Like, if somebody told me, like, and it was really funny though too, is like I have heard Jubilees. I've listened to it on audio. So there's certain things I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that. But I don't know if it's just the end time situation or whatever. Like, oh, that was probably like at least a year or two ago. But everything is jumping out at me right now. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So everything has a date. It's like, God knows, yeah, I know the date and where we were at and what happened. And it's not even like, whatever, I'll just rattle it off for you. I don't care. Like approximately blah, blah, blah. Let me see if I can find the flood really fast. So I'm just like obsessed. Let's see, that's Noah. Like the chapters seem to coincide pretty well too. Like, we're on chapter 4 of Jubilees, and in Genesis, you'd be around on the same chapter. Okay, so check this out. So he commanded Noah to make himself an ark, and Noah made the ark in all respects. And I do believe that it does have the dates of the ark too, or that the ark did such and such. But this is just blowing my mind because it says, in the 27th Jubilee of years, in the 5th week of the 5th year, on the new moon of the first month, 13:07 a.m., bro. 13:07 a.m. What? And he entered in the 6th year thereof, in the 2nd month, on the new moon of the 2nd month, until the 16th. Like, yeah, so that's in the Bible, but only about certain things. This is about like every single thing that happened. And, as far as I know, AM still means AM. Like, I mean, it's literally got AM in brackets, unless it's like means something else back in the 2nd century. But okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, number 7, which was formerly number 8. Animals talked, which, I would put it further down the list, but I think everybody has already suspected that that's probably the case. And it's already been talked about, already part of Christian lore. But it literally says, and on that day, the mouth of all the beasts, this is, the day that Adam fell, And on that day, the mouth of all the beasts, and of cattle, and of birds, and whatever walks, and whatever moves, was closed, so that they could no longer speak, for they all had spoken with one another, with one lip, and with one tongue. So, somebody was hearing that already back then. And that doesn't surprise me at all. Anybody who's watched a TikTok of a talking husky would not be surprised. So, that was cool. And then number 6. We're at number 6. Okay, so they're talking about the chief angel and whatnot. And his name ain't the devil. It's not Satan. It's not Lucifer, which you could argue is all titles anyway. Lucifer is maybe the closest to an actual name, but that would have been a pre-rebellion name. So what is the man called, or what is the entity called? Satan is a title. Devil's basically tied Beelzebub. He's got a lot of names, which he likes to say. But it's referring to him as Mastema. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Don't really want to get good at pronouncing it. But it's talking about this prince, chief, angel person, right? That keeps popping up. The first main thing that pops out at me about him is that after Noah gets on the ark, everyone, this is fascinating. Okay. So after they get off the ark, and then, they do the rainbow happens, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they're the sons. They're, Ham is cursed to be the servant of his other brothers, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff's happening. And then it says, in the 3rd week of this Jubilee, so, 21 years into this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead the children of the sons of Noah astray, and to make them err and destroy them. And the sons of Noah came to their father Noah, and they told him concerning the demons which were leading astray and blinding and slaying his sons. And he prayed before the Lord his God. And so it goes into a long prayer where Noah is praying to God about, can you do something about these demons? Can you just let them be gone forever? And not his prayer is really just can they not be here at all ever again? It doesn't really explain where they came from. It seems to be a part of the Nephilim, which it does mention, and part of the Watchers, which it does mention. But I think there were demons even before that. So it does mention demons a few times and their interactions. And then, so he prays that to God. And keep in mind, this is still the messenger of the presence talking, which is either the Holy Spirit or Jesus or some other fake made up thing. Okay. And it says, and the Lord our God commanded us to bind all. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, Mastema, with some vowel, it's not an umlaut, but it's something over the top that we don't pronounce in America, came and said, Lord Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice and do all that I will say to them. For if some of them are not left to me, I will not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. For these are for corruption and leading astray before my judgment. For great is the wickedness of the sons of men. And he said, he meaning God, uppercase H, he said, let the 10th part of them remain before him, and let 9 parts descend into the place of condemnation. So what it sounds like to me in this particular story is that Noah prayed to God to just eradicate all the demons. And the devil was like, can you leave me some? Because whatever he's saying, whatever his spiel was about, was probably about his legal right to, the men who choose evil now that they're in a fallen state. It says, I will not be able to execute the power of my will on the sons of men. these are for corruption. So it's almost like, we've always known, like we always say that God is in charge of everything or whatever. And this proves it because, the devil's got to go to God for the power to whatever. So it seems like he's pleading his case, saying like, don't you want, you need some of these, for the evil men. So God says, okay, you can keep 1/10. So the idea that we're dealing with 1/10 of what could be out here is insane, first of all. I don't know if that's still holding today or what. And then it says that they taught Noah medicines, and I don't know, it says, and we explained to Noah all the medicines of their diseases, together with their seduction, how he might heal them with the herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down all these things in a scroll. And there's quite a few times where it says, yeah, and we told him everything what to do, and he wrote it down in a scroll for all men to keep and have. So this idea that God is like keeping this information from you, or is not, whatever, it's like we keep giving, like finding a righteous man to write all this stuff down. Enoch was another one, which was in one of my honorable mentions. So we keep giving y'all all the information, and then once that dude dies, you just like chuck it so you don't have to use it anymore, and it gets lost. Like, so that was kind of like a very, not so much a revelation, but a reminder, because you know that, but it's like to see it in practice, to see the details. It's like, yeah, no, that's what happens. Okay, and then speaking of that whole situation with him, then before that, it's like it talks about the fallen angels, and you want there to be more details, and you're like, okay, Enoch obviously is a book for that if you want to see more details into that. But it did say something interesting about, and I don't know if that's what he means by this or not. So it did say that, it's like the daughters of men, the angels, the sons of God went into the daughters of men. It doesn't say sons of God. It says messengers of God. Took wives, and then they became giants. It's very interesting because it says that they had all different kinds of stuff, and that they were all slaying each other. It was like the giants. There was giants that had angels that had giants, and angels had something else. It had like a name. I wish I could find that passage, but I can't. But and then God is repenting for making the whole creation. But it says that he had them all like destroy each other, which I think is in Enoch, talking about this Nephilim. It says, and he sent his sword into their midst, that each should slay his neighbor, and they began to slay each other until they all fell by the sword and were destroyed from the earth. And their fathers, meaning the angels that sinned with women, their fathers were witnesses of their destruction, and after this they were bound in the depths of the earth forever until the day of great condemnation. So that is in Enoch. And then it says, and he destroyed all from their places, and there was not left even one of them whom he did not judge. And he made for all his works a new and righteous nature, so that they should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be all righteous, each in his kind always. So I was like, is that saying that after that he made angels that did not have the ability to sin? Like, it's a really small passage of the whole thing, and kind of vague in that Bible way. That's vague. But that's what it says. It's like, so if that's true, if that's what I just read, then that would mean like after this period, he made angels not sinnable or something, which would explain why this hasn't happened again. mean, it was weird in the first place, but that explains why it hadn't happened again. That we didn't have to worry about any more rebellions. I always thought that was just because it was a really, really heavy sentence, and the angels were like, well, we don't want to deal with that. So, but that doesn't mean that all of them are gone and there's just these new type of angels. That means that the ones that fell are gone, but the ones that did fall are still up there, and they probably still have that original nature. So there's the archangels and whoever there's some that probably still have that ability but never take advantage of it. Probably the same with the angels that rebelled with the devil. It's like maybe they had free will or whatever. And so that's super interesting. So yeah. Okay, that's number 5. Number 4, I'm trying to get through this whole countdown. I don't want to start a new video. So number 4, super cool, shouldn't take too long to describe and set up for you. I should just be able to read it. Oh, I didn't underline it. Wait, maybe I did, and that's just not the right place. No, this is about Abraham. Okay. Here it is. Thank goodness. Okay. So we're talking about Abraham. And this is when God appears to Abraham. First of all, there's such a completely amazing, it goes into his history, which Josephus also does. But, and I feel like it's about the same in details. But, I don't know, there's something that I don't remember seeing ever in this about Abraham and just his history and just I know that Josephus said about how Lot, he treated Lot like a son because he didn't have any children of his own. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's why all of the to-do about Lot. So it goes into that, and it talks about his brother, there was a fire that Abraham actually started because it was the gods. It was him coming to an understanding at an early age, okay, all of this stuff is not real. There's one God of the universe. Why are we doing this stuff? It's really interesting. Okay, so so this is the part. So God comes to Abraham. He's like, go leave your country and leave. All of that's the same. And it says, and I will be your God to your son and to all your seed. Do not fear from now and to all generations of the earth. I am your God. Okay. So again, keep in mind, Jubilees, what are we doing? This is God recounting to Moses on Mount Sinai the history of everything, right? And he's up to Abraham. So, and it's supposedly the Holy Spirit talking. Doesn't seem to be an angel because it's also in all caps with God. But it doesn't, there's no other people. It just says, this is what I did, this is what I did, or we did. Never says I. Also very interesting. So that's very interesting. That might be a really good, no, because Jesus does say I too, but not very often. Because I was noticing that about him. God can say I. He says I a lot. Jesus can say I, but doesn't seem to very often. He's talking about my Father. But this particular person that's talking is saying we. Even when God is not involved, it's still we. Okay, just want to keep reiterating that because I think it's super interesting. So this is, and then it says, and the Lord God said, open his mouth and his ears that he may hear and speak with his mouth the language which has been revealed. For it had ceased from the mouths of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow. What's the overthrow? That's the Tower of Babel. Because it says it it says it here in the brackets. Okay. And I opened his mouth. This is the messenger of the presence talking. And I opened his mouth and his ears and his lips, and I began to speak with him in in Hebrew, in the tongue of the creation. All right, before I get to the next part, which is also super interesting, I just want to talk about that for a little second, because that is another part of Christian lore, which I think we borrow from Jewish lore, where, if you're into like, if you're way into like what the Jewish perspective on the scriptures and stuff, you'll hear about this idea of Hebrew being the first language. And it's all like some say, some say, some say. They never say, oh, the book of Jubilees says. I don't know why the book of Jubilees is the stepchild. I just don't get it, because this is an amazing, fascinating book. And everything that even is just like lore is in this book too. So why people just feel like they can't come out and say like, oh, we got it from Jubilees. Some say that, Moses on the mountain, Mount Sinai, like God gave him the history of everything. And that's how he wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Or some say that blah, 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 or whatever. So I don't know. So yeah. So then it says that he began. So I didn't even say the most fascinating part, but I wanted to get to this part too. And it says, and he took the scrolls of his fathers. This is Abraham. And he took the scrolls of his fathers, and these were written in Hebrew, and he transcribed them, and he began from then on to study them. And I made note to him that which he could not understand, and he studied them during the 6 rainy months, whatever that means. So here's what I love about that. And again, even if you don't believe that Jubilees is whatever, this is what you can take from this. The idea that there would be scrolls written in a language that is no longer understood. Like for them, this would be ancient scrolls, like legitimately. Like what year are we up to? What Jubilee is it? These would be ancient scrolls that they're keeping this stuff. They're preserving the history. Noah is preserving this history. And that stuff from Noah, he could have kept that like from the old world. Because I mean, if Hebrew, like no one has spoken after the Tower of Babel, which happened post flood. So who knows how long people had Hebrew, but for a long time. So there was no Hebrew spoken. Like he gave them all languages. It wasn't Hebrew, and it was like all these other different languages that weren't Hebrew. And then, so it wasn't spoken on earth until God found Abraham, and then he gave him the Hebrew back. And then he went and found the old scrolls and was able to understand it all. So they were just keeping these scrolls that were ancient. And it's like, you know how stuff is, the more you don't understand it, the more like it looks, it's like, oh, this is ancient stuff. We don't understand it. Let's keep it. So it's like all the hieroglyphs and the cuneiform and all this stuff that we have. So that's super cool. Like, that's a super cool detail for somebody to just be making up. Like, so far, nothing is like outlandishly just sounds ridiculous. You know what I mean? That's amazing. For it had ceased from the mouths of all the children of men from the day of the overthrow. That's like so cool. All right. So, that's number 4. Oh gosh. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. This is like so cool. Like I do remember reading this again. Like I don't know why this didn't why I wasn't blown away like I am now. Because I do remember reading it. So y'all know how they go into the promised land, or they're in the wilderness, let's say, and then God tells them, hey, listen, go to the land of Canaan. And, they search it out, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And maybe you're a little kid in church or whatever, or maybe you're a grown person in church and you're like, well, what made him pick that place? And then it's like, go in and, kill everybody and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, oh, God is so evil. Like, why would you do that? And why would you annihilate everybody? Like, what's all that about, right? Okay. So, let's do a little backstory. So, when Noah gets off the ark, basically he's got his 3 sons, and they basically, it's just them. So they like divide the whole earth into portions. So they cast lots. I mean, obviously they got they don't have that much interest in spreading like that far out, but they cast lots and divide up the land. So it says, and he called his sons, talking about Noah, they drew near to him, and he divided the earth into the lots, which his 3 sons were to take in possession, and they reached out their hands and took the writing out of the bosom of their father Noah. So what it sounds like is that he like put 3 pieces of paper in a hat, mixed them all around, and had him choose which one. And it doesn't say like the Lord made it happen, but you can imply that. Or the Lord chose for them. But I think that, in this case, I would say that, whatever Noah decides to do, God is going to honor that. So it's holy because that's what Noah did. So that's what Noah did. They cast lots because it says that when Shem picked what he picked, it says the portion came out by lot for Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever to his generations forevermore. And Noah rejoiced that this portion came out for Shem and his sons. So it really was random. Like Noah was like, yes, my favorite son got the best piece of the land, right? So Shem, that's who Abraham comes from, all that. Well, Canaan comes from Ham, which is the cursed son, remember? Fast forward. And Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south. And Canaan, this is the dude Canaan, that the land is named after, saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he did not go into the land of his inheritance to the west. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon. Blah, blah, blah. And his father Ham. So even Ham, who was the cursed one, was like, and his brothers, Cush and Mizraim, said to him, you have settled in a land which is not yours, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if you do so, and you and your sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. For by sedition you have settled, and by sedition your children will fall, and you will be rooted out forever. Do not dwell in the dwelling of Shem. Who is Shem? Shem is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. For to Shem and to his sons did it come by their lot. It was theirs. It's because Canaan, the land of Canaan, guess what? Did he move? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. But he did not listen to them and dwelt in the land. And for this reason, that land is named Canaan. Isn't that amazeballs? Were you sitting in church just like, why would God just like get uproot, just get people out and just make them move? It was there. And Canaan just was like, no, I'm going to take it. It's going to be mine. I'm going to name it Canaan, and it's mine. And even his daddy, which is the one that uncovered Noah that got cursed, was like, bro, I wouldn't do that if I was you. Isn't that amazing? Even when you try to pin stuff on God, you can't. And then you get older, and then the stuff that you were like, well, I'll just let it slide. Like, I don't know. I get it. Maybe one day we'll understand. You still can't even pin that on him. He is like, I love that so much. And I remember reading that and just like, was like, forgot how powerful that was. I just forgot how powerful that was, because I was like, dude, people have, the whole minds have been split about God over this stuff. And it's like, yeah, what I thought. You don't have all the information, and probably with all the information, you would realize that God is right. Like, how hard would it to be to believe that time has covered over the key information that you probably need? So I love that. Oh, well, Jubilees was probably written after the fact, and so they could have just made up that whole story, and maybe that's probably not even real. It's like, who would do that though? Like, why? Like, who is in the second century? Like I know people hate that defense, but it's like you have to. It's valid. It's like I'm the type of person people talk about like, oh, the counterfeit, don't study the counterfeit, study the real. Well, that requires something. There's a reason why people go around studying counterfeits and calling out counterfeits, because it's more comfortable to do that. It's more comfortable to be like, that's fake, because it's fleshly. It's like you have to decide what's more important. The reason why I would, it's a metaphor for a reason. When you study the real, you could still get it wrong because you're a human being. So which thing would you rather get wrong? Would you rather get wrong the thing that you think is right and you accept it, you go, oh, and then you find out later it was not right at all? That's very embarrassing. But if you're studying counterfeits and you're calling out counterfeit, and you accidentally call out something counterfeit that isn't, it's not really that embarrassing. You just move on. It's detrimental to the authentic thing that it's like, we could have had something authentic and you called it counterfeit and now we don't have the benefit of it. But it's like, yeah, but we don't know what that could have been. So, so people would rather just cut out something that could be real because it doesn't look that poorly on them. But for me, I want to please God. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if there was something authentic out there, someone authentic out there, and I shunned them. There was my spirit was bearing witness to something, and I turned it down because it looked. That is way worse to me. I would rather not do that. I would rather just, oh, praise the Lord. Yeah, praise the Lord. Oh, he's a Christian. And then turns out he's not. I would much rather fall on my face. Most people would rather not fall on their face. And so that's why you get a lot of just heavy, scissor heavy people going, nope, 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 nope. Because that's the flesh. That's pride. That's my side sermon. Okay, I promise I'm going to cut this off like at 1. I would really like to get to 125 and just have it be done. Anyways, that's my little mid sermon. So that is amazing. That's number 3. Number 2. So it's getting really revelatory around here. Number 2. This blew my mind just in particular because I had some certain ideas about, Adam and Eve and how this certain thing went. I literally, when I read this, I went, no. All right. So, Garden of Eden, right? Serpent. Okay. And the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows that on the day that you will eat thereof, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, and you will know good and evil. And the woman saw the tree, and that it was agreeable and pleasant to the eye, and the fruit was good for food, and she took thereof and ate. And when she had first covered her shame with fig leaves, she gave thereof to Adam, and he ate. No, Eve. No, Eve. That's so damning. Oh my gosh, Eve. That's so embarrassing, sis. Why would you do that, sis? Oh my God. She already ate and she did. Her eyes were open. She was like, I'm thinking, oh my God. And then she turned around and gave it to Adam, sis. Oh my God. Why would you do that? That's a bad look for us all. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Oh gosh. Oh, that's not necessarily, this is fake, man. It's not even real. Okay, but still, this perspective exists. Someone wrote it down. This has already been thought about. I have never thought about that. I have never thought about that possibility. That is terrible. That is terrible. So then I had to be like, okay, so why would she do that? Why would she do that? And then it was like, well, it's not, after that, it was like, why else would she do that? It's like, you done sinned. It's like, now I can totally get into that perspective because I'm a human with this problem, this new problem that she's got. I've had that in my entire life. I know what happened. She was instantly like, oh, she had messed up. She now had to have another person in that hot mess with her. Like there's like 10 different things it could have been. She needed another hot mess person with her. She thought it was worth doing because nothing happened. It doesn't say that anything happened. Like God came down, was like, what happened? Whoa. So that part, it doesn't contradict. Like I said, like, I don't know, that seems pretty difficult to write something that's got new details in it that doesn't contradict. To have a detail like that big and that like game changing, but it still technically does not contradict. Like, that's some precision there. Like, it feels like we're just getting the rest of the story. It doesn't feel like it's not taking you off into a different direction. It's just like, wait, what? Like, that's a whole different thing. That means it was not just one thing. Like, did a day go by? Was it a couple of hours? She took a bite, then she instantly was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then she went and found fig leaves, and he was just like, why are you wearing them goofy leaves? Was he like, you silly goose? Why you got that on? What are you doing? Naked as the leg, just naked, 3 sheets to the wind. And then she gave him the fruit, and then he went and got him a skirt. Bruh, that's too deep for me. That's too deep for me. Oh my gosh. That's terrible, Eve. That's really, that makes us look bad. I mean, it's all just humanity, but still, yikes. So that was number 1 for a while, actually. Like, I was like, wait, I only have 9 on my 10. I got some honorable mentions, but we're not going to go over that today because look how long this freaking video is, which I knew it was going to be, but oh my gosh, I hadn't prepared. So, because I'm still halfway through the book, so I will leave some of this other stuff. Or I could just rattle them off. So, here's my honorable mentions. Okay, so apparently heaven keeps the Sabbath. That's pretty cool. Now, I gotta freaking read it. I'm sorry. Okay, it says, oh, good. Okay, it's right here. It says, he finished all the work on the 6th day, and all that is in the heavens and on the earth and in the seas and in the abysses and the light and the darkness and everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep Sabbath on the 7th day from all work. And all the messengers of the presence and all the messengers of sanctification. Now, it does say messengers of the presence here, but it's all lowercase. The messenger of the presence that's talking is uppercase. Messengers of sanctification. These 2 great classes, also interesting. What does that mean? He has hidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in the heavens and on earth. So they're working for 6 days and resting on the 7th day in heaven? Apparently so. That's what this says. Okay, another honorable mention. Adam was actually put into the garden for realsies. So they were created. It says, once they got kicked out, it says, on the new moon of the 4th month, always know which day everything happened, Adam and his wife went out from the Garden of Eden, and they dwelt in the land of Eldah. in the land of their creation. How cool is that? And then later it says that when Adam died, they buried him in the land of his creation. Super cool. Where's that? I don't know. Somebody find out where that is. Okay. And then we talked about, I think I talked about a little bit already. Like, so God knew that we were going to mess up all the days and get it wrong, which is that whole 364 days out of the year situation. But it's like how he's like, your descendants are going to be in captivity for 400 years, and then they're going to cry out to me, and then I'm going to say, like, he's just like, yeah, you're going to mess up all the days. He's like, for this reason, the years will come on them when they will disturb the order and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day. And they will confound all the days, and the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to you that you may testify to them. For after your death, your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason, they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. He's like, yeah, y'all are going to mess this all up. Like, I know it already. I thought that was interesting. And I don't know what this whole 364-day argument is. Like, I don't know how deep it goes. Like, it seems like the Jews probably have beef with that. I don't think they're keeping 364 days. So it's like, well, we need the 365th day to keep the seasons. And it's like, probably if you just did what God said, he'd probably just do it naturally. But I don't know. So, I mean, I don't care. Really, of all the things, like, we've gotten it all wrong. So, and he knew we were going to do that anyway. Okay. And then another honorable mention was Noah. I always like to be like, oh, Noah. It doesn't mean that Noah was righteous. It just means that his DNA, like, I don't know, this is kind of conspiracy territory, so maybe they don't say this. But it's like where it says, like, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, and this thing about Noah being upright. It's like, that's not talking about his character. That's talking about his DNA, because, after the angels did whatever they did, he was the only one that had, clean DNA. All right. Which, okay, maybe, but it sounds, after you say it like that, it sounds like Terminator 2 or something. It sounds real, just like fleshly male reasoning. So this is what it says about Noah. And as for all those who corrupted their ways and their thoughts before the flood, no man's person was accepted save that of Noah alone. For his person was accepted in behalf of his sons, whom God saved from the waters of the flood on his account. For his heart was righteous in all his ways, according as it was commanded regarding him, and he had not departed from anything that was ordained for him. So he was in the line of Abraham and all of these other dudes. He was righteous in all his ways. When he prayed to God about the demons or whatever, God was about to eradicate all the demons. And the devil had to be like, wait a minute now, hold on, you need some of them for the unrighteous, whatever. The point is, it makes a point of making Noah, he was a patriarch. He wasn't just a technicality, you know what I'm saying? So, and it's all really very interesting. And like, there's a pattern of just like, actually Abraham, I think the reason why we say Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob like that is because 3 generations, that's a long, for human beings, that's a long a long generational time for them to be worshiping the same God like that down the line. Because as soon as Noah died, them sons was out. Like, he loved Shem, and that's who, Shem stayed close to him. Like, it says that. Everybody else spread out, stayed close to Noah, and then you could always see who the favorite sons were. There's one part where it says that, because, there's Jacob and Esau, who are Isaac's sons, and it says Rebekah loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. That's what it says in Genesis. Well, in Jubilees, it says that Abraham also loved Jacob. So his granddad loved Jacob too. So Rebekah loved Jacob, and Abraham loved Jacob. But Isaac loved, I don't know what Isaac was with Esau. I don't know. He loved him some Esau, but nobody else did. Like, I don't know, whatever. So that was interesting. Stuff like that. So, here's another little tidbit. where's Enoch? This could probably low-key be number one for somebody. So it says that Enoch was taken after, 365 years. It breaks it down to Jubilees, but it's the same as Genesis. But it says, and he was taken from among the children of men, and we conducted him. This is the messenger of the presence talking. We conducted him into the Garden of Eden in majesty and honor. And behold, there he wrote down the condemnation and judgment of the world and all the witness of the children of men. So it goes into more detail about Enoch too, and about the fact, it says, he was the first among men that are born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of the heavens according to the order of their months in a scroll, that men might know the seasons of the years according to their separate months. So it's like he was like the first like man of learning or something. So that's like, I guess, to show you sort of like what his character was, his Myers-Briggs. Okay. And then, but it says, yeah, it doesn't say like he was no more. It says he was taken from among them and we conducted him into the Garden of Eden. Now it's vague about, because it says, and on account of it, brought the waters of the flood on all the land of Eden. So I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he went to heaven after the flood or what or whatever. Oh, that's not true. This is contradict, blah, blah. All right. And so here's my number one, just because it's fresher in my mind because I just read it last night. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm probably going to have to talk about 5 more minutes. This thing's going to cut off probably. Y'all just be blessed if this thing cuts off, okay? This is my final one. Okay, so this is Abraham. So you know that story about Abraham, and then he, he has Isaac, and it's like, yay! And then God's like, go down and sacrifice your son for me, and blah, blah, blah. And then your pastor is like, yeah, but then thousands of years later, God would sacrifice his son, and he wouldn't take it back, and he would blah, blah, blah. Okay, right? All that very valid. We love it. It's correct. Okay? Just see how this little detail hits you, okay? And the prince, should I back up some? Abraham, he's faithful and all, and he loved the Lord, and then everything in affliction, he's faithful, Abraham, faithful, right? And the prince Mastema, boo! I feel like that's his real name. I don't want to keep saying it. I mean, I don't care, but like, honestly, that's got to be him. Who else is going to be? Came and said before God, and like, just listen. Behold, Abraham loves his son Isaac, and he delights in him above all other things. Command him to offer as a burnt offering on the altar. To offer him as a burnt offering on the altar. And you will see if he will do this command, and you will know if he is faithful in everything wherein you try him. So, Mastema pulls a Job on Abraham. Don't you find that interesting? What I find interesting is it could go either way. The critic could be like, that's not true. I'm like confident in Job, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. I can believe that. I can also believe that the devil is just doing the same thing, or he's doing it again. As soon as God finds someone faithful, he's like, yeah, but I bet you won't. I believe that as well. I believe that he will try that, do that as many times as it works. Because he's got something to prove. Look what it says before that. The voices in heaven there were voices in heaven regarding Abraham, that he was faithful in all that he, meaning God, told him, and that he loved the Lord. So it's like they're in heaven talking about Abraham. And here's the other part that I love, because that was just to telling you like the idea that the reason why that happened wasn't just God doing a shadow of Jesus, but because the heaven drama. It's like everybody's in heaven like, look at Abraham. Oh, they're like watching their TV show called Humans, and they're like, Abraham's my dude, or whatever. And then hating old Mastema comes up there. He's like, yeah, but I betcha. And I mean, wherever Job is in the timeline, Job could have been the second person. For a second, I was like, what if Job is Abraham? And I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense because he had a whole different set of trials. But Job could have been second because Job was written it wasn't written at the time. It was written like, I don't know, I think it's like, obviously it made the canon, so it had to have been before Ezra or around the time of Ezra before. So it wasn't written, it's not super ancient is what I'm saying. But anyway, like neither is this, but I'm saying neither of them are. Okay. So here's the other part that I love that makes me really want to believe this whole thing. Because then it says, and the Lord knew that Abraham was faithful in all his afflictions. For he had tried him through his country and with famine, and had tried him with the wealth of kings, and had tried him again through his wife when she was torn from him, and with circumcision, because Sarah had just died the previous chapter, and had tried him through his wife when she was torn from him, and with circumcision, because he had to circumcise when they was grown men and circumcise his whole house, and had tried him through Ishmael and Hagar and his maidservant when he sent them away. And in everything wherein he had tried him, he was found faithful, and his soul was not impatient, and he was not slow to act, for he was faithful and a lover of the Lord. That's just humans writing down. Humans wrote down what they think that, the parts of Abraham, and then they just made it into what God thinks. Like, that is so cool and amazing to think that God, all that stuff that Abraham went through was like, oh, that's just life. And it's probably happening for all of us too. It's like, oh, that's just life. Life happens, blah, blah, blah. No, he tried him with this. He tried him with the death of his wife and this whole Ishmael and Hagar drama. Because one part it was talking about how him and Ishmael, he loved Ishmael and they were like dancing or whatever. And Sarah was mad. She was like, whatever. But like, God was like, yeah, you do need to send him away actually. But like, that was sad for him. Those are both his sons. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's like, oh, remember Ishmael too. And God's like, I won't remember Ishmael. Like, oh my gosh. Like all of the trials, like it was like, he tried him through all these things and his soul was not impatient. Like, and there's even a whole part, even when Sarah died, that was like, he was seeing if there was impatience in his heart, like any part of it, about any part of that happened. Like, was he bitter with God about her death and stuff? Like, I love that. And he was plenty satisfied with Abraham. And then here come old hating devil. Yeah, but I bet you if you did this. And everybody in heaven is like, so is God's hand forced, or does he do it because he knows that he can handle it? But also like, if he makes it through, like, now I'm going to bless you big time for realsies. Cause that's definitely the language of what happens in both Jubilees and Genesis. It's like, okay, now I'm going to bless you for real because you did that, because you obeyed me. Like, I've talked so long about this book. I had to do my top 10. That was my number 1. So this Jubilees, that I just picked, and you see how I had a hard time. That was 10. It took me a really long time. And I had 5 honorable mentions, and I'm only halfway through the book. I don't know what would possess anyone to put this book on the shelf just because it sounds like, oh, well, it says that there's some sins that never get, like, whatever. It's like, okay, well, Jesus hadn't come yet, and what are you talking about? That's your big thing? That's your big gripe? There's no, it's seamlessly in line with Genesis. So far, what I've read, there is nothing that contradicts Genesis. To have a whole book full of these rich details that doesn't contradict another book, I don't know. It's giving inspired to me. But at the same time, I'm very glad that it's not in the Bible because I like the work that Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and all that makes you do. And you wouldn't, I don't think people would take this book for granted. And some people may be like, oh, you're a hater. Give us the information. It's not going to make you believe in God anymore. It's only a blessing for people who already believe in God and love God. It's just like cool stuff and it's very like, it's the same energy when people have near-death experiences, and God is just very open. He's not like holding back information. He's like, I would love for y'all to have this information. Folks keep burying it because they don't want to be good and they don't want to feel their wickedness. I mean, that's clearly the gist. So go get Jubilees. Go find Jubilees audio or something. It's amazing. But also watch my next video, because I am going to go through my other top 10, my second top 10 of the last half of it probably. So I got lots of more reading to do. And I thought I was going to do 2 videos today. Ha ha ha. Technically, I probably did. But y'all be blessed. I can't believe this lasted as long as it did. 1:45. Yes!